Hello there, welcome to Medical Tutor. Today we are going to be studying 2010 JAM Biology Past Question, and we are going to be solving all the 50 questions there with some explanations as well in relation to other questions that can be brought out in the same topic. Alright, before we do that, please ensure you click the subscribe button, as this is going to help the channel to keep moving, and I pray for success in your upcoming exam as well. God bless you as you do that. Alright, the first question for today says which biology question paper type is given to you. Obviously, this is how previous JAM questions were being set with paper when there were not much introduction of CBT, so we can just skip number one. Number two, so number two says which of the following characterizes a mature plant cell? Which of the following characterizes a mature plant cell? So the features of a mature plant cell is that it is no longer in developmental phases. It means it is already completely grown to the exact point of function. So a mature plant cell is going to be in the particular shape you expect a normal cell to be in. So for example, they say the cytoplasm fills up the entire space. Even a young plant cell already has this feature. Almost all the cells have this feature of cytoplasm filling up the spaces. So the second one says the nucleus is pushed to the center of the cell. That's not also true. The cell wall is made up of cellulose, and D says the nucleus is more irregular in shape. So what do you think the answer can be? Of course, the answer is C. The cell wall is made up of cellulose. So in a mature plant cell, one of the most important characteristics you have to look out for is the content of the cell wall. Once a plant cell becomes mature and viable for life, the cell wall is already filled with cellulose, hemicellulose, and other components that can make the wall of the cell to be like suitable and to make the cell viable for living in the condition that it might be prepared in. For example, in the extracellular matrix in conjunction with every other cells. Do you understand? So the cell wall of a mature plant cell is already fortified to withstand the pressure, all those eating of the wall, the body of the tree, or you trying to bend the tree, all those things. These are the features of the cell wall. So it is very important that as a plant matures itself and the cell itself also matures, the cell wall is already filled with cellulose, hemicellulose, and other materials that can make them resistive to whatever pressure they might be receiving from outside. So the feature of a mature plant cell is the cell wall is made up of cellulose, and that is option C. So number 3, which of the following is not a function of the nucleus of a cell? Well, this is beautiful. As we all know, the cell contains some structures known as organelles, and example of the organelles, we have the nucleus, we have the mitochondria. Okay, you can list the rest in the comment section. The Golgi apparatus, endoplasmic reticulum, rough and smooth. So we have the mitochondria. I think I mentioned that. We have the vacuoles, the food vacuoles, water vacuoles, this and that. We have the lysosomes, we have the ribosomes, which is one of the smallest organelles. We also have the centrioles and few others. So you can continuously list them in the comment section. Ensure you do that. It's very important. So now the question is that each of these structures, each of these organelles in the cell, they have their functions. Already we know that Golgi apparatus is the house of processing, packaging, and transporting, right? We know that endoplasmic reticulum is responsible for production of proteins by the rough ER, whereas the smooth ER will produce steroids and also engage in detoxification and few other functions. And we also were aware of the function of centrioles in division, right? So now all these things have their function, and now this time around we are being asked that which of the following option is not the function of the nucleus? That is, everything except one is not the function here. So number 1, it controls the life processes of a cell. True, it controls life processes, so that this is not correct answer. They are asking for the one which is not. So normally the nucleus is the center of control in the entire body, in the entire cell. It gives us information, contains hereditary information, it tries to direct the entire activities of the cell. So A is correct, but it's not for this question. We're asking for the one that is not correct. B says it translates genetic information for manufacture of proteins. True, it is from the content of the nucleus that you are able to produce proteins. For example, the nucleus contains the DNA. The DNA is now transcribed to the RNA. Then the RNA is translated to protein. So you can see that it helps us in translation information for manufacture of proteins. And in all this transcription and translation, they are carried out by the order or by the guide from the nucleus. Do you understand? So B and C It stores and carries hereditary information. This is also true about it. Normal, I already told you about the DNA, the gene, the inheritance, everything is inside the nucleus. However, this says that it is the reservoir of energy for the cell. That is very wrong, because the nucleus is never the reservoir of energy for the cell. So I don't think I need to tell you about the energy house of the cell, right? So if anyone asks you what is the energy house of the cell, obviously that is the mitochondria. That's one of its most important jobs. It has other jobs that is very, very important as well. But one of the most important job of the mitochondria is to serve as the powerhouse of the cell. So D is the correct option we are going to pick in here, because this is not the function of the nucleus of a cell. So right, number 5, the dominant phase in the life cycle of a fen is the dominant phase in the life cycle of a fen is the first. You have to understand, when we're talking about a life cycle, we are talking about a kind of alternation between phases of growth in a fen. Now, talking about the alternations, we are talking about the gametophyte and the sporophyte. That is the spore forming phase and the gamete forming phase. I will repeat again. The phases in the life cycle of a fen includes the spore forming phase, also known as the sporophyte, and the gamete forming phase, also known as the gametophyte. So now, one of them has to be dominant, that is the one that has to give rise to the next one that is much more important. Or you can also term the dominant phase as the phase in which you can refer to the fen as a fen. I don't think you understand me. So we have two phases of a fen. We have the gametophyte phase, we have the sporophyte phase. But we're looking for the dominant phase, and I told you that the dominant phase is also the same thing as the phase in which we can look at the fen and call it a fen. Do you understand? Which means in the other phase, even if you see the fen in that phase, you can't call it a fen yet. It's in a developmental stage. So because you can't refer it to a fen when it is in a developmental stage, so that one is the less dominant, or you can pick it as the recessive or something. But the dominant phase is the phase in which you can call the fen a fen. It's already grown up at that stage. It is obvious to the eyes, and you will know that okay, this is a fen. So that's what we call the dominant phase. Now, I already told you that we have two types of the dominant of the phases in life cycle of a fen. We have the gametophyte and the sporophyte. But the gametophyte is not the dominant phase. I'm going to show a little image actually here. If I don't, I will put it in the comment section so you can see the alternation. A is wrong. Gametophyte is not the dominant phase of the life cycle in a fen. Prothallus, this option B, prothallus is actually not a phase. Don't be confused. Prothallus is just a part of the fen that is formed. Listen, prothallus is a part of the fen that is formed from the spore. And I told you that there's also a spore forming phase. Now during this spore forming phase, a part of the fen gives rise to the prothallus. Now the prothallus is now what we divide into the antheridium and the archegonium. If you've heard of the antheridium and archegonium before, antheridium means the male gamete. Do you understand? Whereas archegonium means what? Obviously, you can put the answer in the comment box. Antheridium is male gamete, so obviously you know what the archegonium can mean, the female gamete as well. Do you understand? So the prothallus is a part that is formed from the spore forming phase, the sporophyte, which will give rise to what? Antheridium and archegonium. So it is not a phase, it's just a part of the fen. Do you understand now? Then the C, obviously if gametophyte is not the phase and prothallus is not the phase that is dominant, then obviously the correct answer is C, the spore forming phase, also known as the sporophyte. And option D is obviously, I already told you that antheridium and archegonium are just derivatives of prothallus, which is itself a derivative of the sporophyte. Do you understand? So the correct answer is sporophyte, C. That's the dominant life cycle. All right. Number 5, parental care is exhibited by. Talking about parental care, we already know it's not all animals that tend to their offsprings when they give birth actually. So some of them, they just give it and leave them alone, and they are allowed to live on their own. And while some, they still stay, they tend until they ensure that their young one have grown to a certain extent. Do you understand? So an example, I don't think we need to really talk much or think much about the answer. The correct answer here is birds. Yeah, birds. Even in the birds in your house, talking about the domestic birds, look at the chickens and others. When a chicken hatches, you notice, even before hatching, when they first lay egg, you notice the protection they give to the egg, the warming up with their body, even when there's cold and everything, even at the expense of them not eating, they warm up their eggs. And after the eggs hatch up, you notice the way they protect their younglings. And you notice that until a certain age, the hen is always protecting them. No matter how bold you are, if you try to take the children of the bird or something, they used to be much, that's why I use the word children. They used to be much. So you try to even take one of them, you notice the way the hen is going to react. That's just for domestic birds. We also have other type of birds, for example the eagle. Have you ever seen a place where all these hawks, they try to capture the children of a domestic bird, and you see the domestic bird trying to chase them away? At the same time, the hawk is also trying to fight for a kind of battle in which is going to be able to snatch the domestic birds or the children of the domestic birds. And why? At the end of the day, you notice that these hawks carry all these things. They snatch snakes and children of the domestic birds and whatever they catch outside to their nest. And once they get to their nest, they feed it to their young ones. So you can say that birds in particular exhibit a parental guide, just like humans, the way we protect our own children. So you can mark out toads, you can mark out snails. All these ones, once they give birth in the water or wherever they are, the next thing they are gone. So it is mostly exhibited by the birds, and the correct answer is option D. All right, let's move on to question number 6 and 7. But before we do that, I want you to study this diagram very well. It says, you can see the first animal here. It is a rabbit, obviously, and you can see the second animal. This is a crocodile. The second animal, a frog, and the third one, fish. So the first one again is a rabbit. Second one is a crocodile, and the third one is rabbit, while the fourth one is a fish. Okay, now I want you to observe that question very well, the image very rather, before we go to the next question. Rabbit, crocodile, frog, and fish. Now number 6, with respect to their decreasing dependence on aquatic conditions for reproduction, which of the following is the correct arrangement of the animals represented? With respect to their decreasing dependence on aquatic conditions, which of the following is the correct arrangement of the animals represented? So we want to look for the organisms that depend a lot on aquatic condition for their reproduction more. So starting from the highest level to the lowest level of dependence. So obviously from this image you can see, without even thinking much, you all know that fishes are the one that will rely most on aquatic condition for their reproduction. So the first ones that have it is fishes. Then if you want to look for the next ones after fishes, that is decreasing dependence, after fish we have, obviously we don't even think much, the frog. You know, if you go to riverside, you will see all these frog children and others. Their birth is always, it's very rare for you to see the birth of a frog outside aquatic condition. It's always in aquatic condition, in the water habitat, and so on and so forth. So the first ones that rely a lot are the fishes. Then next to them, which is just a little bit lesser than the fishes, are the frogs. Then next to them are the crocodiles. Then you already know the answer for this first one. Rabbits don't need aquatic condition like that really much for them to reproduce. They stay on land, they are terrestrial, and even though they might need the condition to be sometimes warmer and this and that, they have little dependence on aquatic condition. So the first one is fish, followed by the frog, followed by crocodile, followed by the rabbit. Just like a reverse cycle of whatever is in this table already. So that is 3. So according to our answer from the image, you can see that the answer today will be number B. So B says 4, 3, 2, 1. Like I said already, from the fish to the frog to the crocodile to the rabbit. So 4, 3, 2, 1. Option B is correct. So number 7, which of the animals represent the oldest creatures? Which of the animals represent the oldest creatures in terms of evolutionary history? So which of the animals in that image, that is in this image, which of the animals here represent the oldest evolution in animal history? So which one do you think has been existing for so long and has been evolving to give diverse forms? So obviously that would be the fishes. We have so many diverse forms of fishes. In fact, according to scientists, we have so many life forms in the sea that are yet to be discovered. So many species of fishes that they might even be living in deeper places, and these ones have been in the cycle of evolution since the beginning of time. If you're also a Christian, you notice that in Genesis, when God first created everything, he ensured that he split some water into the sky and made them sky water, and he made some to stand on the land, made them land water. Then he created things that will live in them. Even before he started saying, oh yeah, land give for land do this, it was this the water that first gave rise to something. So one of the most primitive organisms that have undergone evolution, obviously the fishes. So the correct answer is option D, fishes. That is the oldest creature in terms of evolutionary history among the diagram there. So number 8, which of the following groups of cells is devoid of true nuclei? Which of the following groups of cells is devoid of true nuclei? Talking about true nuclei, cells that are devoid of true nuclei are also known as the prokaryotes. Yes, I believe you still remember. Prokaryotes are cells that are devoid of true nuclei, whereas eukaryotes are cells that have true nuclei and have walled cells or membrane organelles. So prokaryotes are without true nuclei, whereas eukaryotes are with true nuclei. And there's a kingdom for classification of animals. We have the kingdom Moneran, we have the kingdom Fungi, we have the kingdom Plantae, Animalia, and even the viruses. So now, to know which ones are prokaryotes, obviously there's no need to go much. That will be the kingdom Monera, guys. The reason is because they contain the archaea and the bacteria. And as you all know, archaebacteria are prokaryotes. In fact, bacteria in general, they don't have anything like true nuclei. So anytime you ask you a question regarding to prokaryotes, just remember the bacteria straight up. So once you remember the bacteria, just know that's the only answer there. So kingdom Monera contains archaebacteria, and normally archaebacteria are prokaryotes. Now the reason why we didn't pick algae, because you might be thinking, why is algae not the answer? Some algae are actually eukaryotes. So some algae are actually eukaryotes. It's only the mixture of algae with bacteria, also known as the archaebacteria, that are under the kingdom of Monerans that are called prokaryotes. So a lot of algae they are actually eukaryotes. So that's why we didn't pick it. But you see, kingdom Monera on its own generally consists of organisms which are prokaryotes. So the following group of cells that is devoid of true nuclei is option B, Monera. So the next question, we are asked to use this diagram to answer question 9 and 10. So let's try to check the diagram very well. You can see that the arrow is pointing to the upper part of the foot of the bed, and now the question says that the main function of the feathers covering the part labeled eye is to do what? So you can see this part labeled eye, the function of the feather or the hair that is here is to do what? Now before we answer the question, I want you to understand that the legs of birds are actually non-living. They are made up of keratin and a lot of things that are really unresponsive. So it's not like there's nothing living at all in the leg, but the majority of the leg is built up from all these dead cells. And that's why you can see a bird stand on naked wire without being shocked, because in the first place it has been completely insulated by the dead cells. Do you understand? Unlike we humans, if we try to do the same thing, but them, they have been completely insulated because of the buildup of keratin and a lot of other molecules in their leg. So at the upper part of their leg, there's actually something that's also helping them to prevent shocking, to reduce heat, and a lot of things. That is the feather here. So you see the function of the feather at this little part. Is it to fly? It's impossible. The function of the feather here is not to fly. These are flying feathers here already. So, and even some of them around this point, the ones that are under are mainly for insulation. Except from the air that is in the upper part, which is responsible for flying, the rest are mainly for insulation. Insulation from heat, from electricity, from mainly heat. Let's remove electricity from mainly heat. So the only function of the feather at this upper part of the leg is for insulation. It's impossible for us to go and put for flight or anything. Do you understand? So the correct answer here is to serve as insulator to maintain body heat. So the correct answer is option D. Do you understand? So number 10, based on the shape, structure of the beak, the feet and the feet rather, the bed is represented is likely to feed mainly on. Again, based on the shape and structure of the beak and the feet, the bed represented is likely to feed mainly on. Now let's look at the beak. Look at the beak of this bird. You can see that it sharply went down. It won't resemble parrot. I'm very sure that's one of the things that will come to your head. But you can see the beaks of a parrot are not this are not sharply deviated. They didn't just come down. The beak of a parrot at least tries to extend and curve, but this one you can see it's as if it's suddenly deviated downwards. So this is not a parrot. That's the first thing. Then checking the body structure, you can see this is not also a parrot. At least this is not how they are built at all. And the legs of a parrot are not this long, obviously, or this way. So the first thing is that the beak It does not resemble a parrot. If it was a parrot, then we could have said, according to the question, what they feed in would have been fruits, because parrots with their mouth, they feed on fruits. But for this bird, since it is not a parrot, then the only bird that can have this kind of feature is the golden eagle. Yeah, you can check out for eagles and some types of owls, not all owls, but majorly golden eagles and other eagles. They have this kind of beak, and the responsibility of this beak in golden eagles, I don't need to really tell us much about that. That is to feed on flesh, obviously. So it is to feed on flesh. So the correct answer here is A. Remember, if it is a parrot that was shown to you, the beak is going to be slowly curved until it comes downward, and the thing they feed on are fruits. But since it is a golden eagle here, what they feed on is flesh. So number 11. Which of the following is true of the transverse section of a dicot system? Which of the following is true of the transverse section of a dicot system? We don't really need to talk too much about this. We already know the differences between a monocot and a dicot. A monocot, the vascular bundles are naturally scattered. Their cambium lies between cortex and vascular. Those are one of the features, and so on and so forth. But for a dicot, one, the epidermis is not completely encircled by the cortex. That is false. And the xylem is more interiorly located than the phloem. This is the correct answer, option B. Now let's check out other options first. The cambium lies between the cortex and the vascular bundles. That is false. The cortex of a dicot system always lies between the xylem and the phloem, not between the cortex and the vascular bundles. And I hope you understand that the vascular bundles are also the same thing as the xylem and phloem. Hope you know. So vascular bundles means the bundles that are responsible for transportation in the plant body. Like in humans, vascular bundle, in us we have the arteries and the veins. Exactly, that's what the xylem and phloem also does. So now the cambium in the dicot system does not lie between cortex and vascular bundles. It actually lies between the vascular bundles themselves, not between them and cortex. And the vascular bundles of a dicot system are not randomly scattered. They are well arranged in ring sections. So the only thing that is correct here is the xylem is more interiorly located than the phloem. Yes, this is true. So that is option B. Number 11. We've done number 11, right? So now let's look at this image. We're going to be using this image to answer the next question. You can see number 1 here, label. It shows a kind of entrance. The only thing that can enter the leaf is obviously CO2, and the only thing that can be coming CO2. The only thing that can be coming out is the O2. Remember that unlike in humans where we take in oxygen and we breathe in carbon dioxide, plants actually take in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. So number 1 is CO2, number 2 is what? O2. Number 3, you can see number 3, it's pointing to this down arrow that is coming from the leaf downwards. The only thing that can come from the leaf downwards, obviously, I don't think I need to talk much about that. It is responsible for transportation of whatever food that is being formed in the leaf. That's the phloem. The function of the phloem is to transport or translocate food, and the only place you can translocate food from is from the leaf after photosynthesis. Did you know the purpose of photosynthesis is to produce, except from energy, the starch and other stuffs needed, which are now stored in part of the body. That's what you harvest here. So this direction here you can see is the phloem, and this fourth direction here you can see it is the xylem. Exactly. So the xylem is responsible for taking up water from the plant root and others and distributing to the other part of the body. So I think I've already given answer to the next questions, but let's go to them. Number 12. The movement of material in the xylem and phloem tissues are represented by what arrows? I already told you that is number 3 and number 4, the phloem and the xylem. So that is 3 and 4, option A. Then number 12 says, during photosynthesis, the arrow labeled 2 represents dash. Now let's go to the arrow labeled 2. During photosynthesis, this arrow labeled 2 is called dash. As you can see, I already told you that plants actually take in carbon dioxide while they emit what? Oxygen. That is opposite to that of humans. So this arrow represents the emission of oxygen from the leaf. It is not this oxygen that will now breathe in as well. Now that's why it is very important that you always have plants around you for ventilation. You always notice that all these our old people, they place more emphasis on planting trees around you. So you can see a house or a community in which there are at least some few trees surrounding, like fruit trees, like mango, there's much more ventilation and much more availability of oxygen, because during photosynthesis and respiration of plants generally, there will always be emission of O2. Do you understand? So the correct answer there is D, release of oxygen as a byproduct. That is what is coming out there. All right. Question 14. Which of the following is lacking in the diet of a person with kwashiorkor? Which of the following is lacking in the diet of a person with kwashiorkor? A. Vitamins, false. B. Proteins, true. C. Carbohydrates, false. D. Fat, false. So the correct answer here is protein. The person that is suffering from kwashiorkor actually is deprived of proteinous food. So at the end of the day, you are going to see them. You will see that their face looks edematous, their face swells up, even their belly swells up so much. It is edematous. That's what they call edema. It's edematous. It swells up so much. So, and the result is because of absence of proteins. It actually occurs between children that are between age 1 to 5. There's another one called marasmus. Marasmus actually occurs below the age of 1, and that one is because of deficiency of protein and carbohydrates. But for kwashiorkor is only protein in general. So the person is actually with energy, but there are some other features that will characterize the absence of protein in the food, because protein is very important for the formation of a lot of amino acids, the essential amino acids which are necessary for the body growth, brain functioning, and others. So the absence of protein in diet leading to kwashiorkor can also cause brain problems or brain disorders and a lot of inefficiency in the body system. So you can see that the features of kwashiorkor, except from the fact that the stomach becomes so big and edematous, you can also be seeing a kind of depressed mood and so on and so forth. So the correct answer here is proteins. The mode of nutrition of sundew and bladderwort can be described as, we can go straight to the answer, Holozoic. I believe this should be a free question to us. It's most times repeated, at least at 8 in 10 it is most time repeated every year. So ensure you place a kind of attention on this. The type of nutrition of sundew and bladderwort is Holozoic. They are actually carnivorous plants. And I think you've heard of carnivorous plants. So they are carnivorous plants, and the way they kill their organisms, I think you're already aware of it. So they feed through holozoic means, not autotrophic. Autotrophic is the natural way where organisms make use of sun to produce food. Saprophytic is when you feed on dead organic matters. Chemosynthetic is when you use chemicals to synthesize your own energy, contrary to using photosynthesis. Do you understand? So number 16. When the mixture of food substance and Benedict solution was warmed. When the mixture of a food substance and Benedict solution was warmed, the solution changed from blue to black red. The solution changed from blue to black red. So now, what does it indicate? What presence does it indicate? First, you have to understand that in testing for carbohydrate and protein, we have a lot of methods involved. So I'll first tell you the kind of test that can be asked for other questions, so that when they change this question and something like this comes out, you are able to answer. For example, in carbohydrates, we use Benedict's test. Now, Benedict's test, what it tests for is a test for reducing sugar. Example of reducing sugar is glucose. Yes. Then we also have some other guys that are around, but I don't think that is necessary for this exam. So talking about for protein, the test used for protein is Millions test. Yeah, Millions test is usually used to test for the presence of what's it called? Phenolic amino acid. Although there's no need to know that it is phenolic amino acid, just know that Millions test is used for the test of amino acid. Do you understand? So for the presence of protein, we use Burette. Yeah, Burette test. So Burette is very important in testing for protein, just the same way we use Benedict for testing for reducing sugar in carbohydrates. So when you mix food substance and Benedict solution, the solution they will change from blue to black red or brownish red because of the presence of a reducing sugar. So this is the correct answer. It is not fatty acid. I already told you this is a test for carbohydrates, and it's not sucrose. Although sucrose is a kind of derivative of a carbohydrate by combining two monosaccharides, it's not reducing sugar because whatever can help in reducing the functional group that is responsible for reducing has already been covered up by bonding, and it's not amino acid. Amino acid is for proteins. So the correct answer here is option A. Number 17. Now, the primary structure responsible for pumping blood for circulation through the mammalian circulatory system is the primary structure responsible for pumping blood for circulation through the mammalian circulatory system is A. Veins, B. Right auricle, C. Arteries, D. Left ventricle. Obviously, I'm going to paste an image here for you to see. Obviously, the correct answer is the left ventricle. You know, we have 4 chambers of the heart. We have the right and left atrium. We have the right and left ventricle. The right ventricle actually pumps blood, or let me say, the atriums, the right and left atrium receive blood, whereas the ventricles, they pump out blood. Understand the function? Both right and left atrium, they receive blood into the heart, whereas the left and the right ventricle pumps out blood from the heart. So the right ventricle is responsible for pumping blood out from the heart into the lungs for oxygenation. That's what they call pulmonary circulation. Whereas the left ventricle is responsible for pumping blood out into the entire body. So for mammalian circulatory system, which is also the same as the entire body, or systemic circulation, that's the left ventricle. Option D. Number 18. circulation of blood to all parts of the body except the lung. You know, I told you the other time that when you pump blood from the right ventricle into the lungs, it's called pulmonary circulation. Now, when you pump from the left to the body, it doesn't go to the lung, it only goes to the body. Do you understand? When you pump to the lung, it goes to only the lung, and that's through the right ventricle. When you pump to the body, it goes through to the body only, and that's through the left ventricle. Now, when you are pumping blood to the body alone, with the exception of the lung, then the kind of circulation there is known as the systemic circulation. But when you are pumping it to the lungs, it's known as pulmonary circulation. And for lymphatic system, you already know it's a system of lymph node and lymphatic vessels. Those are the guys that are very important in fighting off infections in our body. Sometimes you might feel it swollen, sometimes you might feel it that it's down, but it does not function in terms of like circulation of blood in the part of the body, except in some minor places like reabsorption, sending off like the reabsorbed fluid into the veins. But I think that's not necessary for JAM. Just understand that when you send blood from the left ventricle to the body, it's called systemic. When you send it to the lungs, it's called pulmonary circulation. So the correct answer here is systemic, because that is the circulation of blood to all parts of the body except the lung. So option B is the correct answer. Now let's move on to the next question, number 19. Yeast respires anaerobically to convert simple sugar to carbon dioxide and what? Now I'm talking about anaerobic respiration. I think that's one of the most common topics in biology. Anaerobic means without oxygen. So since there's no oxygen, yeast cannot convert simple sugar to the normal products that we are all aware of. So anaerobically, that is in the absence of oxygen, yeast will convert sugar to carbon dioxide and alcohol. And this example is seen in fermentation. Yes. Now, if they've told you before, you will hear that yeast is very important in fermentation of wine. Exactly what it actually does, even in cake. If you've ever seen the way they use yeast on cakes, what it does is that in the absence of oxygen, it will convert the sugar that is present in whatever products you put it in to CO2, which that CO2 can actually, because it's gas, it will leave, and alcohol. So by the time you take your wine and you drink it, you notice that you become intoxicated. Especially for palm wine tappers, when they go to the tree and they take out their wine, initially the wine is just okay with it's not fermented, but after they keep it for like 3-4 days or so, I don't know how long they keep it for, and by the time you try to drink it, even if you take a little bit of it, you're going to get intoxicated, because the yeast that is working or acting on it has already converted the simple sugar in the palm wine into CO2 and alcohol, which is actually very important for intoxication. So the answer is option A, not acid, not oxygen, not water. So number 20, the sheet of muscle that separates the thoracic and the abdominal cavities. I don't think we need to talk much about that. That's the diaphragm, the muscle that separates, I think they shouldn't use the sheet of muscle here, because there are a lot of things that forms the diaphragm. So maxillary ingrowth, the peritoneal, the what was it called, the septum transversum. So these guys, I don't think it's nice for a level, but at least it's not okay to call it a sheet of muscle. But let's just use the word. The structure that separates the thoracic and the abdominal cavity is known as the diaphragm, and that's correct. In the intercostal muscles are muscles that are lining the thoracic cavity instead. They're the one responsible for aid in respiration. The pleural membrane actually surrounds the lung, whereas the pleurocardium surrounds the heart. So the correct answer is option A. So let's move on to the next question. The oily substance that lubricates, the oily substance that keep that lubricates the mammalian air to keep it flexible and water repellent is the oily substance that lubricates the mammalian air to keep it flexible and water repellent is secreted by what? Now, A, by sweat gland, not sweat gland, it's sweat gland. However, sweat gland does not secrete oily substance, it is just sweat. Sweat is composed of water and some other molecules. And sebaceous gland, we already know, I think that's the correct answer. Not I think, that's the correct answer. So sebaceous gland is responsible for secreting oily substance. And you can find sebaceous gland, for example, in male, you can, even females, you can find around the areolar tissue of the breast. And it's very important to prevent the areolar tissue of the breast from cracking down. So it prevents it from cracking down. Otherwise, even in males, this is general for all gender, the areolar tissue will just crack down without the presence of sebaceous gland. So sebaceous gland is very important for lubrication and making it water repellent and ensuring that the body does not crack up. And these sebaceous glands are also found in beds. You understand? So that's why sometimes when you pour water on beds, you notice that it's as if the water is not sticking to their air. It's because of the sebaceous glands that have secreted oily substance that lubricates the mammalian air to keep it flexible and water repellent. And For the fatty cells, obviously false, granular layer false. So the correct answer here is the sebaceous gland. That's the gland that secretes oily substance to lubricate the mammalian ear. Number 22, the outer layer of the kidney where Bowman's capsules are found is the, obviously we have two layers of the kidney. We have the cortex and we have the medulla. And since they have already said that it is in the outer layer of the kidney, so you should know the correct answer is the cortex. We have outer cortex, inner medulla. Remember, outer cortex, inner medulla. So once they say the outer layer of the kidney, just know the correct answer is cortex. But naturally, the Bowman capsules are found in the cortex of the kidney. So even if they did not put outer layer, if they just put the layer of the kidney where the Bowman capsules are found, you can just pick the cortex straight up. Then when you're talking about the medulla actually houses the renal tubules. Talking about the loop of Henle, descending and ascending, the descending and the ascending, what's it called, tubules. We can talk about those ones. These ones are the ones present in the medulla. But talking about the Bowman's capsule, the proximal part of the proximal convoluted tubules and the proximal part of the distal convoluted tubules, those guys are in the cortex. So the correct answer is cortex. Now, question number 23. Which of the following stimuli is likely to elicit a nastic response in an organism? First, you have to understand a nastic response is a kind of response that is stimulated by the environmental stimuli. And one thing you have to understand is that unlike entropic response, nastic response is unidirectional. That is, it is not particular about direction. It is non-directional rather. It's not particular about direction. It's not like entropic response where the direction is very specific. For example, an example of tropic response is gravity. Yeah, so you know that gravity actually works upside down. It works from up to down, like a kind of vertical direction. So you already know that one is a tropic response because there is direction there. So talking about nastic does not rely on direction. And an example of stimulus that can elicit nastic response is light. Exactly. So you can't particularly pinpoint the direction of light or something. Although you might be able to see where the sun is, but that doesn't mean you can pinpoint the direction of light. It's all over diffused. So because of that, it can initiate a kind of nastic response in an organism, despite the fact that it is not really directional. Do you understand? So now, talking about this, we can talk about plants. You notice that plants most often tend to either grow towards the direction of light or away from the direction of light. It's not because there's a specific direction or something, but they always respond to the presence of light. So wherever there's light, they grow towards there. So if you shine light in your entire for example, if you plant a plant and put it on the window of your room, then you open your window, and because light is coming through the window, it's not because that's the actual direction of light, but because that's the place that is exposed to light, the plant is going to grow towards that place. If you open up another place again, light comes in, the plants will also want to go towards that place. The direction of the light or the direction of the growth by the plant is actually determined by the availability of that light, not because the light itself has one direction or something. So a nastic response, it is non-directional and it will elicit a kind of response such as growth. For example, touch is a tropic response because you will be able to determine where it is coming from, what direction, and what part of your body is even being touched. We also have chemical substances and gravity, which I've already explained as a trophic response. So the correct answer here for a nastic response is light intensity. In the male reproductive system of a mammal, sperm is stored in the epididymis. Simple. When talking about the storage of sperm, we talk about the epididymis. When talking about the production, we talk about the seminiferous tubules. Talking about the transport, we talk about the vas deferens. Talking about ejaculation, we talk about the urethra. Again, epididymis is responsible for storage. Seminiferous tubules is responsible for production of the sperm. Vas deferens is responsible for transportation. Urethra is responsible for ejaculation. Do you guys understand? So the correct answer here is the C, epididymis. Number 25. Chemosynthetic organisms are capable of manufacturing their food from simple inorganic substances through the process of oxidation. So they oxidize inorganic substances like some carbon compounds and few other inorganic guys, and once they oxidize them, they're able to turn them into an organic compound for the manufacturing of their food. It's also known as chemosynthesis. So the correct answer is option A. Now 26. The part of the human gut that has an acidic content. Talking about the human gut, we have to talk about the esophagus, the stomach, the duodenum, ileum, colon. Talk about the rectum. Talking about the gut actually starts from the esophagus downwards, the foregut, midgut, and the hindgut. I believe you've heard of that before. The foregut, midgut, and hindgut are the guys that gives rise to most of the structures of the stomach, or almost all the structures in the stomach. For example, the foregut will give rise to the stomach, give rise to the liver, give rise to, I think, even the spleen, if I'm not wrong, a part of the spleen also, and the esophagus. The midgut, we are talking about the colon, or we're talking about large intestine, talking about a few other things, then the indgut and so on. So this gut actually gives derivatives of the abdominal content or the abdominal cavity, and the part of the human gut that actually has an acidic content, the only one that is most obvious, is stomach. The stomach contains gastric juice, and gastric juice is, the pH of gastric juice is about 0.9 to 1.2. That is enough to melt even a blade. If you've heard before, that's enough to even melt you yourself if you were to be splashed by it, I think, because it contains a highly concentrated HCl, hydrochloric acid. So you might be wondering, why is the hydrochloric acid not eating us from inside up? Well, that's because of the protection of the stomach by the mucosal layers and the glands. However, in situations of ulcer, when there's a wound on the abdomen or in the stomach, you notice that the person is always in frequent pain. The reason is because the mucosal lining protecting them from the HCl is already washed away or eroded, or maybe eaten by kind of Helicobacter pylori infection or something. So because of that, the stomach will be exposed to HCl and they begin to feel pain. So that's in cases of people having ulcer, and that's why it's very important that for ulcer patients, the acidic intake is reduced in food that they consume. Even proteinous food, they increase the acidic content of urine and others. So you have to reduce all those things, regulate them until the wound is healed up. You can be administered by an antibiotic in the hospital, or depending on whatever causes your ulcer. But the important thing you have to understand is that once the stomach is exposed, the acidic content in the stomach tries to eat it up, begins to destroy even more walls, and that's why you feel more and more pain. You understand? Imagine having an acid that can melt blade inside your stomach. So exactly. So once the mucosal lining is gone, well, there's a big problem. So the only part of the human gut that contains a very acidic content is the stomach. Talking about the duodenum, the duodenum and ileum are part of the small intestine. The two of them in general, the content that is mostly found in them is what's it called, basic. The reason why it is basic is because the body has to find a way to regulate the acidic content of the gut. So even though the acid from the stomach is mixed with the chyme, yeah, we call the food in the stomach chyme, is mixed with the chyme and it is pushed towards the small intestine. The small intestine has to find a way to neutralize the acidic content, and that's why it has to secrete a basic content as well. Do you understand? Also known as succus entericus. That's what it secretes. So it is this succus entericus or basic content that will neutralize the acid that's coming from the stomach. Do you understand? And in some situations whereby the acidic content of the stomach is too much, it can cause irritation. That's why I see some people going to the toilet frequently. So it can lead to irritation, which can make you to begin to toilet every time. Do you understand? So, and it's not the colon either. The colon belongs to the large intestine. So I think I've explained much of this gut. So even if they ask you a question from anywhere, such as, okay, the part of the human gut that contains basic content, you'll be able to know that it is the small intestine directly. And you already know that the duodenum, ileum, jejunum are all part of small intestine, whereas the colon is part of what? Large intestine. So number 27 rather. Look at these options here. We have stomata to spirogyra, alveoli to earthworm, Maffigian tubule to mammals, and contractile vacuole to protozoa. Now, which of the following structures are matched correctly with the organism in which it is found? Number 1 is wrong. Stomata and spirogyra, wrong. Alveoli and earthworm, wrong. For respiration, the earthworm uses its body, the skin, because of diffusion and others. Maffigian tubule in mammals, also wrong. Then the first one says contractile vacuole for protozoas, and that's correct. Talking about protozoas, we have the amoeba. You already know the amoeba. You already know this. What's this guy called? We have about three of them, but the main guy, the amoeba, and few other ones. Now these structures are the ones that make use of contractile vacuoles. There's this guy I'm trying to remember that looks slipper shaped. It's very important. We have the euglena, yeah. We have the euglena. We still have one other guy. So those are the example of protozoans, and they use contractile vacuole. So that's the only one that is evenly matched here, and that is option D. So number 28. A food chain will always begin with who? That is up to you to answer in the comment section. I'm not going to answer that for you. It's very simple. So a food chain will always begin with one thing and it will always end with another thing. So try to answer that in the comment section. Number 29. Mycorrhizae promotes plant growth by. First, a mycorrhizae is a symbiotic association between the plant and a fungi. So between the plant root and a fungi. Do you understand? It's a kind of symbiotic, a kind of benefit interdependent relationship between the plant root and the fungi. They live together. It's not like one is harming the other. They live together. They help each other to grow. So now the mycorrhizae promotes plant growth by how? A, by absorbing inorganic ions from the soil. B, protecting it from infection. C, helping it to utilize atmospheric nitrogen. D. Serving as a growth regulator. The correct answer is option A. It helps to absorb inorganic ions from the soil. So as the mycorrhizae, that is the fungi part of the association, as it is helping the plant roots to absorb inorganic ions from the soil, the plant will also be giving the mycorrhizae or the fungi its own part of nutrients. Do you understand? So the fungi, which is in relationship, will help the plant to absorb more from the soil, while the plant will also give a little bit of its nutrients to the fungi. So the two of them like coexist. So as I'm helping you, you're also helping me. Do you understand? So the mycorrhizae will promote plant growth by helping it to absorb inorganic ions from the soil. And the way it does is that it increases the surface area and the absorbing area of the root of the plant, so that the plant normally is able to absorb, but it helps you to increase the rate of absorption and also help you to increase the quantity of absorption. So the correct answer is option A. Number 30. The barrier between maternal and fetal blood. Talking about maternal means the mother, fetal means the baby. So the barrier between their blood is, obviously you know the answer, the placenta. Number 31. The blood component that has the highest affinity for oxygen is, the blood component that has the highest affinity or the greatest affinity for oxygen is A. Lymphocyte, B. Leukocyte, C. Erythrocyte, D. Thrombocyte. Lymphocytes are types of white blood cells and they are classified under leukocytes. You should know that leukocytes are another name for white blood cells. The red blood cells are also known as the erythrocytes. Whereas talking about the thrombocytes, we are talking about the platelets. So we already know that the component of the blood that is having affinity more with oxygen is the erythrocytes or the red blood cells. They are the ones that carries oxygen. If you've heard of oxyhemoglobin, yes, the red blood cells contains hemoglobin, and they are known as the hemoglobin, and the hemoglobin is what binds to the oxygen and helps it in transportation. But generally, the cells that are responsible and necessary for transmission of oxygen is erythrocytes. So they are the ones that have the greatest affinity, and another name for them is the red blood cells, like I've mentioned. Whereas the leukocytes are white blood cells, thrombocytes are what? Platelets, and the lymphocytes are just types or examples of or types of leukocytes. So do you understand? So the correct option is option C. Now number 32. Which of the following organisms is mainly found in the marine habitat? Without thinking much, Achatina. If you heard of Achatina, you've read your evolution. Is the evolution they call it in biology? All these naming processes. If you learned it very well, you know that Achatina refers to giant snail in Africa. Tilapia is often found in fresh water. Tortoise is also found on land and on fresh water. But you see the dogfish is usually found in marine habitats. So the correct option here is option C. Now number 33. The two halves of the pelvic girdle are joined together at the pubic symphysis. It's not public. The correct answer is pubic symphysis at the anterior part. So the two halves of the pelvic girdle are joined by the pubic symphysis. The ilium and pubis and obturator foramen are actually parts of the pelvic girdle, or parts of yeah, you can call it just part of the pelvic girdle, but I rather refer to it as part of the, what's it called? I don't know why all these names always run sometimes. Okay, just let's leave that way. Ilium, pubis, and obturator foramen are parts of the pelvic girdle, but they are not the ones that are joined together. The ones that are joined together are the two halves is the pubic symphysis. Are joined together at the pubic symphysis. So I'm going to put a little image here or put it in the comment section so you can understand what I'm trying to talk about. So understand that the pelvic girdle, that is the hip girdle, the hip joints. You can see this hip guy here, the hip girdle here. That your hip is joined together. You can see it's not only, you notice that sometimes as if there are two different parts of your hip separately, but you find out that there is something that is actually holding them together. If you try to palpate or touch the anterior part of your lower abdomen downwards, you feel like there's a kind of joint at that part, there's a kind of bony joint or something. Yeah, so you notice it, unless maybe you have so much fat or something, you won't be able to feel it. But if you are able to feel it, that's what they call the pubic symphysis. It joins the two halves of the hip girdle or the pelvic girdle together. So the pubic symphysis is the correct answer. All right, number 34. Adoption of appropriate nocturnal habits, borrowing, adjusting to internal body temperature, possession of many sweat pores. These are features of some organisms. And now the answer: which of the following above are the ways in which desert animals adapt to extreme heat? I don't want to answer this question for you, so make sure you leave the answer in the comment section by looking at the question very well. You can pause to understand, then answer in the comment section. Make sure you do that. I've left questions already now. So number 35. Low annual rainfall, sparse vegetation, high diurnal temperatures, and cold nights are characteristic features of what? So I'm also going to answer this question for you. The answer is already obvious, so ensure you answer in the comment section. I'm always leaving questions for us so that we can at least try to participate and do some little researches on our own. Now, by researching on this, you'll be able to understand what tropical rainforest is, what desert, mountain forest, and green savanna is. But if I just give you the answer, you want to check it on. And most of these questions, they might not be repeated this way. Sometimes the question might be like, high annual rainfall, much vegetation, short trees are characteristic features of what? So you have to be able to understand the features of what is rainforest. So that's why I'm going to give you the assignment to research on your own. Then give me the answer in the comment section. All right, number 36. The activity of an organism which affects the survival of another organism in the same habitat constitutes. The activity of an organism which affects the survival of another organism in the same habitat constitutes what? A. Edaphic factor. That is false. Edaphic factor means soil factor. It is a kind of factor of the soil that helps the plant to grow. And as you know, soil is not living. So the edaphic factors include pH. Yeah, the pH of the soil. That is the acidity and the alkalinity of the soil. Talk about the temperature of the soil. But here they're asking about the activity of an organism which affects the other organism. So it is not edaphic factor. Abiotic factor is a factor of non-living organisms. It has nothing to do with living organisms, as we are asked in the question. The only thing that is living here is the biotic factor. Even if physiographic factor is a non-living factor, abiotic factor. But the biotic factor is talking about the organisms that are living in the environment. So the existence of one organism can harm or can help or can influence the survival of another organism through what they call the biotic factor. Do you understand? So the activity of an organism which affects the survival of another organism in the same habitat constitutes the biotic factor. Alright, number 37. The average number of individuals of a species per unit area. The straight answer is population size. So the number of individuals per unit area is known as population size. So this is an assignment to you also. Browse out the meaning of population density, frequency, and distribution. The next question in your JAMB might not be coming out as population size. It might be coming out as density or distribution. I noticed that in my JAMB exam back then, there were some questions on population density. So try to check out the meanings of all this and comment in the section below to let us know if you are truly done that. Number 38. The vector for yellow fever is Aedes mosquito. Anopheles mosquito is responsible for transmission of Plasmodium falciparum, also known as malaria. Tsetse fly is responsible for sleeping sickness, whereas black fly is very important for onchocerciasis. Yeah, onchocerciasis, if you've heard of it before, it's a kind of infection as well. But Aedes mosquito is one that is responsible for carrying the virus for yellow fever. Number 39. The loss of soil through erosion can be reduced by watering. Well, we are trying to reduce erosion, so even you watering is like making things worse. We are trying to reduce erosion, so if you put manure, that doesn't change anything. Manure is just for better growth and even irrigation. But the only way you can actually reduce the loss of soil through erosion is through crop rotation. Crop rotation has a lot of benefits actually. You can also read on it on Google. It has a lot of features in helping the plant grow, about 10 characteristics or features that I know of. So try to check out the functions. They might just ask you, crop rotation is important for the following A, B, C, D. It might not be the same question as this. So I'm already showing the way JAMB always repeats their questions. They might not be the same way, but at least read on crop rotation. Alright, number 40. The protozoan Plasmodium falciparum is transmitted by, I already told you the answer the other time, the female Anopheles mosquito. Now note, they might also put male Anopheles mosquito in the option. Just know that the male Anopheles mosquito is not responsible for transmission of Plasmodium falciparum. The male Anopheles is just responsible for fertilization or maybe reproduction in particular. Do you understand? So the one responsible for inflicting malaria on you when you sleep, when they bite you and you start getting malaria, that one is the female Anopheles mosquitoes. And I already told you before, the Aedes mosquitoes are responsible for yellow fever, the coolers, the black fire, and others. Do you understand now? So the female Anopheles mosquito is the only mosquito that is responsible for transmission of Plasmodium falciparum, whereas the male Anopheles is just for reproduction and other factors and other functions. So the answer is option A. Question number 41. A dilute solution of phenethiocarbamide tastes bitter to some people and it is tasteless to others. Now you are not supposed to be concerned about the chemical, the phenethiocarbamide. They are just trying to show you that if some people are able to taste some things, whereas some people are not able to taste them despite having the same tongue, then what kind of feature is that? So we already know about continuous variation, right? We know about this continuous variation. And talking about continuous variation, we're talking about variations that can be quantified or measured. For example, we have the height, the size. Do you understand? Those are things that can be quantified. Then when we're talking about discontinuous, we're talking about things that cannot be quantified and they are often not really measured, and they also vary between individuals. So because they vary between individuals like a lot, they vary really much and they can't be quantified or measured, they are known as discontinuous. An example of it is when some people can taste and some people cannot taste. Do you understand? So the correct answer here is discontinuous variation. So you can also check more on continuous variation and discontinuous variation. Every year there's always a question from it. So okay, let's look at this image. As you can see from this image, the first rising, that is number 1, rise from 0 to 2. The second rising is from midway to at least another midway. The third one is this, and the fourth one is this. And vertically, that's the percentage, and horizontally, that is the height. So now let's look at what the question is trying to say. It says, in which plantation are all the trees between the height of 2 to 4 meter? I already told this is the height, right? So in which plantations are all the trees between 2 to 4 meter? That would be plantation number 3. Now, although number 4 also shares and number 3 and 2 also shares, but they say in which of them is all the plantations. You can see from the beginning of number 3 to the end of number 3 is still within number 2 and 4 height. So the correct answer there is number 3, because all the trees between the height of 2 to 4. You can see it here from here to here. So number 43. Which of the following structure is a feature of plantation 2? Now let's go to the diagram first. What is the feature of plantation 2 here? You know that plantation 2 actually crosses over from between 0.0 to 2 to between 2 to 4. But you can notice one important feature of this curve number 2. The importance of this plantation or curve number 2 is that it's actually the tallest among all of them. And you can see it's the one that has much more population. And the question is asking which one is the feature of plantation number 2. The feature of plantation number 2 is that it has the highest number of trees of about 2 meter high. As you can see, look at it here now. It is one that has highest. Look at, you can see if you trace these 2 up, you can see this aligning with the highest point of number 2 here. So it means that the percentage population of this plantation number 2 is highest, with the highest percentage at height 2 meter. So look at the question again. It has the highest number of trees at about 2 meter high. So obviously that's the correct answer. You can see here from here to here. Unlike these other guys that are standing and stopping at about 10% of the entire population, just a little bit of them. But you see, for the one that stands at 20%, it's the one that has the highest number at 2 meter high. So that's the correct option. Option number A. Alright, number 44. Thyroxine and adrenaline are examples of hormones which control A. blood group in falls, tongue rolling falls, behavioral patterns true, color variation false. So you can understand that thyroxine and adrenaline are actually active hormones. For example, thyroxine is responsible for hyperthyroidism when it is over secreted, and that's why you see when somebody is having too much of thyroxine secreted, the body is always too active, the person will begin to lose weight. Now you can notice that the feature of thyroxine is seen mainly in increasing the basal metabolic rate. The body begins to eat up, begins to function more than normally. So the function of thyroxine is more like eating up the body, like putting the body in a more active state. The same thing with adrenaline, so it's very important for putting the body in an active state. Maybe there is a problem, or maybe there's a bombing around, and maybe there's a thief around or something. The way you are going to respond to it, exactly, adrenaline is very important for that when you are playing football and doing some other things. So thyroxine and adrenaline are examples of hormones that control behavioral patterns. That is your response to the surroundings, fight or flight. So that's option C. Number 45. A pair of genes that control a trait is referred to as an allele. So that's the answer. A pair of genes that controls a trait is known as an allele. Alright, number 46. The chromosome number of a cell before and after the process of meiosis is represented as the chromosome number of a cell before and after the process of meiosis is conventionally represented as dash. Now, before meiosis, you have to understand that the definition of meiosis means reduction. Do you understand? Reduction, division. Whereas for mitosis means multiplication, division. So in meiosis, you're always expecting that you reduce everything. So even if I give you 24, at the end of meiosis, you have to be having 12. So the way it is conventionally represented is 2n to n. Why? Because initially there was a diploid cell, and afterwards you're going to be seeing an haploid cell. So 2n to n. Like I told you, meiosis involves reduction. So it can be 2n to 2n, it can be n to n, it can be n to 2n. Do you understand? So number 47. If both parents are heterozygous for a trait, the probability that an offspring will be recessive for that is actually, the correct answer is C, 1/4. However, I want you to enter the comment section now and explain how I got 1/4. I think in my previous videos I've explained something like this twice, so I want to see if you're actually following up. And for new people, please, I want you to just try to take a little bit of your time to research on this question to find why we arrived at the conclusion that the answer is 1/4. So the possibility of seeing a completely recessive trait is 1/4 out of the entire thing. So give us the reason in the comment section. Thank you. Number 48. At what stage in the life history of a mammal is the sex of an individual set? At what stage in the life history of a mammal is the sex of an individual set? Now, some people might want to go and pick at puberty. Remember, your sex is not set at puberty. At birth, you already have your sex organs available. You're already a male or female at birth already. Do you understand? However, they're asking us at what stage is this set? Is it when they give birth to you that they know that you're a male or you're a female? No. Even in your mommy's womb, the scan can already show that you're a male or a female at a particular month, at least at 7th month or so. The scan should be able to show that you're already a male or a female because of whatever differentiation your body has. So the sex of an individual is actually set at conception. And really, I don't like the word that they use there actually, but at least conception is a better word. Let's still take use of it. At the moment when your mommy is still pregnant, when there's still that pregnant baby, when you are still as a baby or a fetus or so in your mommy's womb, at that point your sex is already set. After I think about a month or so, your sex is already set and you're already either male or female. And then afterwards, you notice that a scan done in the pregnant woman after about the month of 7 or 8 months is able to show if the baby is a male or a female. So your sex is not set at adolescence, neither is it set at puberty. Whatever happens at puberty is just a kind of secondary sex growth or whatever. It's a kind of growth that occurs to show that this guy is a true male. For example, at puberty for a male, you begin to grow more beards, grow more armpit hairs, you begin to grow more muscular. For females begin to grow more body parts and a lot of things. Their voice will become even more high pitched. So those are the functions of puberty, secondary sex features. But for the primary sex features that determines that whether you're a male or female, it occurs at conception, when you were inside your mother's womb and not even at birth. All right, question number 49. The main distinguishing features between the soldier termite and other members of the caste are. The main distinguishing features between the soldier termite and other members of the caste or caste, anyone you use, are the. Now the correct answer here is option C. Now for soldier termites, or like other termites, if you've ever tried to catch all these termites before, a soldier termite is not responsible for fleeing. So most of them, they don't have anything like wings. It's not like they want to use it for pleasure or anything. They're always on guard. They're always responsible for war. So initially they might have had wings or something, but all of them will be shed off once they are converted into soldier termites. So they don't have wings at all. There's nothing like wings. They don't also have all these what's it called, light thorax or whatever. They are very like compacted for battle. So they have absence of wings. They possess strong mandibles. Why? For battle. That's why if a soldier termite bites you, you're going to hate yourself so much, because it's very painful and it's very strong. I don't know if you've been bitten by it before. It's not something that is actually wishable for anyone. So they lack wings and they possess very strong mandible, and they have a very large head, that dark head. Sometimes some of them are brown, but mainly like dark heads. Once you see them, run away. So that's a feature of a soldier termite, and it differentiates from other parts of the caste. So the correct answer is option C. Then coming to the last question. All right, the flippers of a whale and the fins of a fish are examples of dash. The flippers of a whale and the fins of a fish are examples of dash. Now talking about this, you notice that there's a similarity between the two of them. The function of the flippers of a whale and the fin of a fish is both for locomotion. Although the two of them are also in the water, but whatever they use for locomotion is actually different. Now the thing is, this is not because they're actually really different. What happened is that in part of evolution, these organisms were initially having the same thing for locomotion, but as evolution began to occur over the large span of years, some of these people, like the whales, they developed the flippers, or their part of locomotion turned into the flippers, whereas for the fishes it became fins. That's what they call evolutionary development. What happens is that there's a lot of changes, gradual changes that occurs over generations and generations and generations. Now you notice that although these two structures, the flippers and the fins, are having the same function, they differ in structure. That's what they call the divergent evolution. They have a kind of distinct property even though they are performing the same function. I hope you guys understand. For a convergent evolution, when they say something is convergent, it means everything will still come back to the same point. They will look like almost the same thing, like even though they might not even be having the same function, but they will still look almost the same thing. That one is contrary to the divergence. The divergence has the same source. It becomes but the flippers and the fins, they both diverged from something before over generations, before they now became flippers and fins, which are performing the same function. So the correct answer here is option A. Flippers and the fins of a whale and a fish are an example of divergent evolution. So I think that ends all we have for today, and I really want to appreciate you for staying all through the questions. So remember the questions I gave out to you guys, 37 and 38 I think, and one other one. Ensure that you try to research on them. I'm very sure questions will come out. That's why I place an emphasis on ensuring that you check it out yourself so that you can put more mind into it. So make sure you, once you are done with everything you're doing now, check your Google for the answers and comment in the box below. Ensure you do that. It is very, very important, so that whenever any question comes out from this part, you are able to answer them confidently without any problem. So I think that's the end of everything we have for today. Please ensure you subscribe to my channel and please share the link to your friends who might be in it as well. So wait for our next update on JAMB 2011 and other videos that we're going to be releasing soon. And I also wish you success in your JAMB exam. Alright, that's all for today. Thank you so much. God bless you.